Once upon a time, in the not very distant past, the good Queen Multicubs, his son, the Prince Felice Leo, was heir to the throne, reigned over the ancient Kingdom of Leona. But while, like a loving son, awaits patiently enough the hour when his venerable mother should relinquish to him the scepter she had wielded so long and so well, the jolly prince passed his time in occupations and among companions such as caused his virtuous mother many a blush, and her pious subjects to look forward shudderingly to the time when he should become the ex officio head of the church and defender of the faith. But notwithstanding these low tastes and habits, His Royal Highness Felice Leo was regarded as the glass of fashion and the mold of form by all those of his mother's liege subjects who made any pretensions in social standing. To the younger lions, indeed, his example had all the force of positive law, and its influence even extended across the seas into other countries where kings were not, though perhaps by some secretly longed for. So that if the heir apparent chanced to his part his royal mane in a particular manner, it forthright became the sole business of every young lion, and any social aspiration whatever, to see that his own was similarly arranged whenever he appeared in public. Of course, to have gambled with his Royal Highness, or to have spent the night in his company under the same dinner table, was almost equal to a patent of nobility, or to the happy young lion who could claim the honor. This being the state of affairs, it chanced that one night, in escaping rather hurriedly from the house of an old lion, who had heretical views as to the honor conferred upon his family by the royal visits, the prince slammed the door violently upon his own exalted tail, whereby it was so severely injured that the court surgeons, when summoned, declared amputation to be necessary. The operation was accordingly performed, and, at the next drawing-room, the unfortunate prince made his appearance shorn of that adornment which seems logically necessary, if I may express it, to complete lionhood. Such a misfortune might have driven any private citizen in the kingdom into retirement, but it was otherwise with the prince. It was no sooner remarked by his young followers and imitators that their beloved exemplar was tailless, than that they began, one and all, to bemoan their own endowment in that particular, and at a conference held soon after by a small number of ultra-fashionable, it was unanimously decided that the disgraceful appendages must be gotten rid of at any cost. A consultation with the fashionable physicians proved quite satisfactory, for, by the use of anesthetics, the operation necessary could be made comparatively painless. In a few weeks' time, tailless lions became so common upon the streets as to excite little remark, while at court, by the pressure of public opinion, aquatality became de rigueur. During the prevalence of this mania, some parents even went so far as to have the operation performed upon their children in their early cubhood, along with baptism and vaccination, but then some will always be extreme. For a time, all went well in the fashionable world of Leona, together with its imitators in other lands, particularly the young eagles who pulled out all their tail feathers in order to be as much like Felice Leo as might be, congratulated itself upon having happily tided over a dreadful crisis. But earthly happiness is in its nature fleeting, and never more than in this case. For it happened one day, or rather one night, that Felice Leo, having overeaten himself at a banquet of hippopotamus flesh, was gathered suddenly to his father's, in spite of the combined efforts of the whole College of Surgeons, and his brother, Prince Longclaws, became heir apparent in his room. Now Longclaws was a young man of a serious turn of mind, with a leaning to Calvinism and Greek roots, which vulgar taste had of course kept him much away from court, so that he had not been affected by the mania for amputation which had possessed all who belonged to Felice Leo's set. The courtiers beheld with horror and the darkest misgivings the ascension to the heirship of a prince who had a tail as long as any low-born lion among his future subjects, and there was even some loose talk of an act of settlement to exclude from the succession one so palpably unfit to reign. But of course, all of this came to nothing in the end, and Longclaws was duly declared to be the heir to the crown and dignities of his worthy mother. And now there began dark days for those hasty time servers who had mutilated themselves in the hope of standing well with the late prince. For the new leader of fashion, being himself amply provided in the matter of a tale, could not be expected to look with favor upon those whom he must have regarded as deformed, and it was soon noticed that he chose his officers and lords-in-waiting, his lord high-trousers creasers, and warmers of the royal shirt, etc., from among those few members of the court who, in spite of contumely and ridicule, had adhered to their inherited terminations. What was to be done? To cut tails off is comparatively simple, though somewhat painful, but to stick them on again, there's the rub. Grow out again they would not, though some shrewd quacks drove a large trade of advertising unguents and elixirs warranted to restore the most abbreviated tale to its pristine length and beauty, thus imposing upon the credulity of the more simple-minded of the courtiers. There was nothing left for the unfortunate victims but to retire to private stations where their deformity would be less conspicuous, and this was the course adopted by most. Some betook themselves to their estates in the country, where in the retirement of a rural life they had ample leisure to reflect upon the mutabilities of fashion and the hardships endured by votaries. Others, less wise, attempted to brazen the matter out by remaining at court and clinging to such post as could be extracted from the good nature or of the pity of their new heir, but they soon lost all dignity and consideration. And an occasional survivor of this unhappy band will still be pointed out by the inhabitants of Leona, and he sleeks by with an apologetic air as though conscious of his own disgrace. This fable teaches us that while the accidental deformities of the great may be more worthy of imitation than the virtues of the obscure, yet nevertheless extremes are to be avoided, and though not strictly germane to the issue, we may be permitted to remark that one is compelled to carry about a stepladder in order to be able to shake hands with fashionable acquaintances. The Kingdom of Leona, written by Philander Stansbury, published in Short Stories, a magazine of select fiction, Volume 10, in 1892. Narrated by Conan Stewart for Tales Reawakened on YouTube.